to get a long response back. As we'll be doing throughout the course, there's going to be a lot of exercises, and there's typically going to be a space that says your work here, which is kind of the place for you to begin your work. Okay, now we're usually just going to leave a single code cell for you, but by no means feel constrained at any point in time to use just a single code cell. If you're unfamiliar with Jupyter, there's a lot of ways to create new cells. Maybe the most simple way is just to use this plus icon, right? You can also, if you're hovering, use keyboard shortcuts like B to make a new cell below. So always feel free to use lots of cells or multiple cells if that's helpful for you, right? Or, if it's a simple prompt and you want to, you can just use a single cell as well. Furthermore, whenever we prompt you to do an exercise, we'll pretty much always provide a solution for you. And those solutions tend to be hidden. You can expose these solutions by clicking on the field here that says however many cells hidden, and it's going to unfold, in our case, the 5 cells we used to create and kind of explore a solution. All right. So I really recommend you actually get your hands dirty and do the exercise. I'll go over a solution presently, but if you'd like, now's probably a good time to pause this walkthrough and do the exercise. And then after you've had a chance to give it a go, come back and unpause the walkthrough, and I'll go through the solution together with you. Okay, hopefully you had a chance to try out this exercise and didn't find it to be too complicated. It's mostly just a repetition of what we did above. In our case, for our prompt, we chose to ask, what is the OpenAI API? Just like we did before, we used the client's chat completions create method, passing in our already defined model string, as well as our list of messages with our prompt. We got the content off of the response that we created here, and then printed it out at the end. And in this case, you can see we got a rather lengthy response that talks in great length about the OpenAI API. And actually, there's probably a lot more here that I haven't even gone over with you. So if you're interested in a deeper dive on the OpenAI API, might be worth checking this out and seeing what the model has to say. Okay, now the last thing we want to talk about before we move on to the next notebook is understanding the difference between completion and chat completion endpoints. In the OpenAI code that we've used so far, you can see that we've been using the client's chat completions method, and we're not going to be using it at all in this course, but we could remove this chat and just use the completions endpoint. Okay, so there is a completions endpoint and there is a chat completions endpoint. All right, now the reason why there's 2 of these endpoints is because commonly we have 2 different kinds of LLMs that we tend to work with. One kind of LLM is oftentimes called a base LLM, or just has no additional name like chat or instruct in its name. Okay, and those LLMs are LLMs that have been trained and then are now post-training ready for you to use in your program code. Now, I mentioned that we're not going to be going into a very deep level of concept or kind of theory around how LLMs are created and work, but here we're going to go into a little bit of detail because it's actually going to be practically important for the rest of what we do in this course. When an LLM is trained for the first time, the thing that it's trained on is being able to correctly, or as best as possible, predict what the next word will say in a sequence of words should be, right? So, for example, if I say something like, at nighttime, I go to, and then I stop right there, right? You're probably already thinking like, oh, I go to sleep. Or maybe I might say I go to bed, right? Or maybe I work the night shift and I go to work. Or maybe I go out with my friends, right? So there's a lot of different ways to complete that sentence. And what the large language model does when it's being trained on a lot of data, right, is it's trained to correctly predict what the next word or the next series of words is in an already existing sequence of words. Okay? So if you get a large language model, or you use a large language model that is a base model or a non-chat or non-instruct model, right? Then the thing that that model is designed to do is to be given a sequence of words and then to continue that sequence of words, all right? Now, what you're probably more used to working with, and what we're going to be working with entirely in this course today, is a variation on that kind of large language model that we tend to call a chat variant or an instruct variant. And the reason why we call it that is because after the existence of a base large language model, which again is trained and ready to continue sequences of characters, this model underwent a further form of training that we call instruction fine-tuning. And instruction fine-tuning is the process by where you take a model that is capable of extending sequences of words and you give it additional examples and training so that you can interact with it conversationally and perhaps even over multi-turn conversations, right? So let's think of an example here. If I were to ask you, what is the weather like today? Right? It's very, very common that you might say something back like, oh, the weather is very nice today. Right? But for a large language model, it's not actually a base large language model. It hasn't been trained to somehow understand that a question is being asked and answer that question in a helpful way. Rather, it's only going to try to continue the sequence in the way that's most probable, right? So the conventions by which we work with models that expect multi-turn chat conversation are different than the conventions by which we work with models that are only intended to continue a sequence of strings, okay? And that's kind of mostly all the theory we need to go into about it, but you need to understand that we're working specifically here with chat models, chat variant models, a model that has been instruction fine-tuned, right? So when we say to it something like, today is a good day, instead of trying to just further that sentence, it's going to assume that an individual of a given role made that statement, and now it, as a helpful assistant, as someone different, right, as a different personality than whoever made that initial comment, needs to respond in a helpful, instructive way. All right. So there's a couple places later in the course where understanding this structure of instruction fine-tuned models is going to be important, and we'll talk about it a little bit more. But for now, just understand that because we're using a chat variant, we're working with a model that has been additionally fine-tuned to behave as a separate persona than the user who is utilizing it, and behave in the form of a helpful conversational assistant rather than just a model that completes sequences of strings, right? And because of that, right, when we're working with the OpenAI library like we're doing now, we definitely use the chat completions endpoint, right? Not the completions endpoint. And furthermore, when we start using LangChain in the next notebook, you're also going to see that we're going to make some specific choices about how we work with LangChain to tell LangChain that we're using a model that is instruction fine-tuned and is intended to be used as a conversational chat assistant. Okay, so if there's any takeaways from that, just know if you see examples of code in the future, right, as you continue your work, especially examples of code that are using the OpenAI library, like we're doing in this notebook, it's very much worth noticing whether or not that code is using chat.completions or whether it's using simply completions. And furthermore, when you're looking at models that you want to use in your own work, you really definitely need to pay attention to whether or not that large language model is a base large language model, or if it's undergone additional fine-tuning, instruction fine-tuning to be a chat variant of the model, right? And that's typically made explicit by the name of the model, which by convention will include a dash chat, or we'll include a dash instruct, like the Llama 318B dash instruct model that we're using in this particular session. Okay, so that's a key distinction. Base non-chat models, chat instruction fine-tuned models. They behave differently, and we use different coding conventions to work with each of them. And again, in this course, we're working entirely with an instruction fine-tuned chat variant of the Llama 3.1 8 billion parameter model. Okay, great. So just to summarize this notebook, by completing it, you should now have a very basic understanding of how to use the OpenAI library to generate chat completions. And furthermore, you've seen how we can drill down into those responses to get the information that we're most interested in, at least for now, which is the actual string response to our prompt that we got from the model. In the next notebook, we're going to do Hello World again, but this time we're going to do it with LangChain. I think you're going to agree and discover very quickly that working with LangChain is going to provide a lot more flexibility and eventually advanced capabilities for managing and generating text with large language models. So I'll see you in the next notebook.